Welcome to another broadcast of the Dr. Briar Lee Mitchell Show on the Artist First Radio Network. Briar Lee Mitchell is the author of Big Ass Shark, Walking on Mars, and Dark Lights. Her books and bio can be found at briarmitchell.com. Dr. Mitchell is also a nationally certified search and rescue volunteer, helping law enforcement find missing people with her canine partner, Thor. And ladies and gentlemen, Briar Lee Mitchell is a heck of a painter. Check out some of her work on her archive page at artistfirst.com. Here she is, your host, Dr. Briar Lee Mitchell.
In November, and I'm glad to see that the weather's starting to cool down. I have a very interesting guest tonight. My guest is going to be chatting with us from up New York way, Paul Carinci. I can't pronounce your name. John, you got to pronounce it for me.
Carinci.
Carinci. Thank you. Can I call you John?
Sure.
Because I'm going to keep stumbling over that. John has a really fascinating book, Defying Death in Hagerstown, which is going to be what we're going to be discussing tonight. But John, what I'd love to do to get us started in the interview tonight, if you could chat with my listeners a little bit to tell them about yourself.
Okay. Well, I'm about 60 years old. I've been in the life insurance business for about 40 years now. And many people change careers and all different types of jobs, and I'm basically doing the same thing for many, many years. I just really, truly enjoy helping people with their life insurance, health insurance, and investment needs. And I worked myself all the way up, and that's a whole story in itself of how that happened. But yeah, I'm still doing it. I work for myself. I represent all different companies. Live in Staten Island, native Staten Islander, and married to a wonderful wife, Vera.
Oh, so you're still up in New York, Staten Island, and you're still working in the insurance industry. And I get a lot of listeners, and quite a few friends of mine also, who are interested in writing and kind of just don't get into it. It is a big career change, and so you're transitioning now. You're still doing the insurance, but you also have a nice legacy of books that you've written, and the one that you've done recently, the Defying Death in Hagerstown, which is the one we're going to talk about tonight. But you've written a number of books here. You have The Psychic Boy Detective and The Power of Being Different and In Exchange of Life. So you've got quite a few books that you've done. So you've been doing this for a while. Now, what brought you to doing this book, the Defying Death in Hagerstown? Where did the idea come from for that book?
It came totally by accident. I actually was writing something called The Last Lumber Mill Standing or something like that. And I was doing research for that, and all of a sudden, I love memorabilia. So I'm always buying. I love signed items and signed books by authors and whatever. So I'm out there on eBay and I'm searching around and buying things and selling things and whatever. And I come across a diary. And it says from 1923. And I said, oh, this is nice. I put a little bid out there. I don't think anyone else was bidding on it. And a day or two later, it says, oh, guess what? You won. I says, oh, I won? I don't even know if I won it. So I says, what is this diary about? It's just by a young woman from Maryland. And I get the diary in the mail, and it is a hardback, old-fashioned diary of 365 pages, all handwritten in pencil.
Well, was the book put up for bids like this from family, or was the book found somewhere? How did it get to be in an auction? Nobody knows, so we don't know where the book really came from. Interesting.
I says to the fellow who was selling it, I says, who is this by? And he says, we don't know. And it's an actual diary. It's not really a book. It's a diary, handwritten. And so I get the book, the diary, and I'm starting to flip through, and I'm starting to read it, and all of a sudden, I feel like I'm in 1923. And every page, it's almost like a full page, 365 pages every day of the year was filled, handwritten. And there's only one name in there, basically, of the woman, and her name was Lolita. And I'm saying, wow, now I'm really drawn into this thing. And I'm saying to myself, just like you said, who would put this diary out on eBay? And I love history. Anything old, I love history. So I'm reading through this, and now I'm reading how life was in 1923 and how innocent. And this girl, I mean, she must have been around 20 years old. And she was an assistant to a teacher. And again, her name was Lolita, and there's a swing in the backyard, and there's a piano, and the family gets gathered around the piano to listen to music. She gets movie magazines, and the biggest thing is to go to a movie. Because now put yourself in 1923. What was there? I'm sure the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And that probably was popular, and the girl loved to dance. I guess go to different dances and whatever. Now I'm saying, okay, I have to know who this person is. Who is this Lolita? There's no last name. And from Hagerstown, Maryland, and I become consumed. If you're going to write 10 books, sooner or later, you become consumed. You have to be consumed to write a book, I think. Otherwise, you never finish it.
I agree.
Yeah. Now, all of a sudden, I'm consumed, and I want to know more and more and more. And so I read the entire thing. I see all kinds of aunts and uncles, first names, gifts at Christmas and whatever. And I'm saying, but who is this woman? So now I put it out to my cousin. I make photostats of the diary and whatever, and we pick up a last name of a boyfriend. And the boyfriend's name, his first name, is DK. DK. Not a lot of hints around here. But my cousin found one last name of the boyfriend. So now I assumed that she ultimately married this boyfriend. And that's the only way I was able to track down who this person actually was. And now, of course, I'm not stopping. I'm consumed now to try and find family members. I'm trying to, I don't know, I just consumed because I'm back in this time. I thought it was great. So I start making phone calls out of the blue to people in Hagerstown, Maryland. And one woman says, she later we became very good friends, but she says, you know, I was going to hang up on you. I thought you were like a real weirdo from New York. Because you got to understand now, I have a New York accent, and they have, I don't know, Maryland accent or something. She says, I thought you were a real pervert or a weirdo, and I was going to hang up on you. But she says, there's something about your voice just captivated me, and I had to listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's my best friend out in Maryland. And she was very helpful in the book. And so all of a sudden now, this is like 2 years of research on a diary, and then I says, you know what, there's a book here. But the book has to be fiction. It can't be real. I can't use real people, and I can't put her in this book. So I did find out a lot about the woman and when she passed and whatever, and prominent family and so forth. And so now I said, okay, I got to come up with a fiction book. And I love the name Lolita. I want to keep the name Lolita. So we come up with an older woman of 110 years old, the oldest woman in the United States, and her name is Lolita. And she lives in a town called Hagerstown, Maryland, and she's in a nursing home. And we have a young reporter who is down and out. His father passed away. His fiancé leaves him for a doctor, and he's drinking heavily. And works for the Washington Gazette, and he's ready to jump off a bridge because he just feels like everything is gone in his life. And like I said, he's a reporter, and everybody's picking up that he's a mess. So the editor calls him in one day and says, "Listen, this is your last assignment." And he's got the editor from hell, by the way. This editor is the crotchetiest guy in the world. He's really kind of nasty. And he says to this young reporter, "This is your last assignment. He says, you've been giving me crap assignments. Well, you're not writing good anymore. You can't write anything decent. You go and work on obituaries or whatever. You're going to go work on this old lady from Hagerstown." And he's, "Oh, great. I'm going to work on somebody who doesn't even have their mind or whatever." And again, he's just fed up with life. He said, "Listen, if you want to keep your job, you have to work on this story. So you're going to go interview this oldest woman in America, and you're going to find out how she has lived to such an age and so forth." And reluctantly, the reporter says, all right. His attitude is still bad. And on his way to Hagerstown, Maryland, he finds out that there is a diary from 1923. And in his diary, it mentions a triple murder, unsolved triple murder from the year 1923, when this woman, Lolita, penned the diary.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a really fascinating premise for getting the book started. So you have an actual diary. You have the actual name of the woman, and you were doing research into the background. But the murders that you're talking about, they didn't actually happen, did they?
No,
that's part of the fictional aspect of it.
Absolutely. I had to make this fiction now.
But the feeling and the feeling of being in the 20s, that comes from what you read in the diary.
Yes.
Okay.
And now we have a very elderly woman, and so he's out there, he's traveling to Maryland, and he's starting to, before he has an appointment the next day to see this Lolita, he's starting to nose around Hagerstown, Maryland, and he's more, you remember, he doesn't want to talk to this old lady in Maryland. He wants something meaty. So he's starting to nose around for the triple murders. And he's starting to ask too many questions of too many people. And all hell breaks loose over the next few days. And bullets fly, and people are in a lot of danger. And this older woman, who he thought was going to be senile, happens to be the most philosophical, inspiring woman that he's ever come across. And she's got a real lovable character. Very outspoken. She's a very outspoken character, and everyone speaks to her for her inspiration. And she's changed so many lives. And she's basically almost blind. But she keeps telling him, Sonny, get close to me. I want to look into your eyes. Get closer. I can't see. And she reads him immediately. She knows that he's at the end of his rope. And there's a real great story here of how she's able to change him, and he falls in love with her nurse in the nursing home. It's a great story.
Oh, I'm totally captivated by it. It totally pulled me in.
This is a movie. This is basically a movie. Mm-hmm. It reads just like a movie. So I can't tell you too much more, but they do solve the murders.
And he gets the writer gets the ideas. Now, does Lolita actually tell him, or is she kind of feeding him clues, or is she giving him information to find more insight and courage within himself, since she has
it becomes
figured
very,
out?
very deep, because Lolita, when she was very young, had some visions. And her uncle was able to almost send her messages when she was younger and teach her, and she had some visions. and she doesn't want to talk about the murders at all. She's very, very personal, and she doesn't want to really discuss it. And he doesn't want to let up on it.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, he starts getting some visions and going back to the diary and picking up, and she allows him to read this diary. She hands him the diary after she befriends him and says, "You can read my diary. You want to know more about me and how I made it to this age? You can read some of my diary from that year."
In your story, the people who were killed, this triple murder, were they family of Lolita?
No.
Did she know them?
They were all young girls from her school that she was teaching at.
Oh, okay. So she was a teacher at the school where these young women had been attending school.
Yeah, they all knew each other very well. They used to go to dances and whatever together. It was a very sore subject for the entire town.
Well, as you were doing the research, John, into potential links or people who might have known Lolita in Hagerstown, was there a Lolita? Were you ever able to find out the person who actually wrote the diary? Because she potentially could still be around.
No, she's long gone. 1923 to now is a long, long time, and of course I wouldn't stop. I didn't write one word until after 2 years of researching and being satisfied of knowing who this woman was. And I did have her. I wouldn't stop until I had an obituary.
Oh, did you find one?
Yeah.
Oh.
I was obsessed. And I never got really that crazy about. But when I do write a book, I have to basically almost live it before I can write it. Otherwise, to me, it's not believable. And I found out who she was. Obituary. I think she died at age 78. who her family was and so forth. But I didn't reach out to anyone else except for this one woman in Maryland who, believe it or not, is a distant relative.
Of Lolita?
Yes. And I took a piece of this woman in Maryland. I took a piece of her character and put it into Lolita. And that's where I got the feisty woman, the feisty old woman. Oh, it's great. It's a great story.
Oh,
because
very intrigued.
It's so personal now to me that the woman in Maryland became my best fan for all my other books, and she used to say to me, "So when are you going to write this book about Maryland? I mean, am I still going to be alive by the time it's done?" And it's just, I'm not ready. It's not ready. It's not ready. And all of a sudden, it clicked, and the pen just started writing itself.
Well, when you started to write, now when you're preparing this and you were starting to write, did you have the idea already that you were going to do this fictional story of the murders? Or did you just start writing, like, say, a bio of Lolita? How did you get started with this?
It's really strange, but when I do begin a book, I basically have the exterior of a jigsaw puzzle. I know pretty much the story.
Okay.
Almost like an outline in my head. And it may take months and months and months before I actually write that first word. And then it'll start. And then when I start, it'll just be a process, and then all of a sudden there'll be a twist, and there'll be another twist. And then in the middle of the night, I'll get up and write something on my nightstand, and there is a great twist. It just happens like that.
Well, you have written quite a few books, and
there's a story behind each one of them, but this one happens to be this happens to be special, and it's almost like I was being encouraged by somebody to finish this book, and that's all I'm going to say.
It almost sounds a little spiritual, almost that you were in touch with Lolita.
It's just special. That's all I can say.
I don't think there's anything really, John, that unusual about something like that. I think when people write biographies about somebody who's passed, I don't think it's uncommon for them to get a sense of who the person was, and they're not really sure how they're getting that information. And you could cite stories or examples of being in touch with somebody who has died, and this is maybe as a ghostly presence or something like that. But clearly there was something there inspiring you. You do have a passion for writing, and maybe Lolita was there in a way to help inspire you to finish or to complete the story.
So I'm writing this thing,
mm-hmm.
and it's pretty much done in manuscript, or I'm putting the finishing touches on this thing. And so I want to self-publish it. I don't want to put it out and ask publishers to publish it. So I prepay to have it self-published, and I'm going to, in 6 months, have it sent off to the self-publishing and have it done. And as an afterthought, I send it to a publisher who suddenly says, you know what? We're kind of interested in this. And I says, oh, great. I just paid for self-publishing. They're waiting for it, and they're saying, is it done yet? Is it done yet? And no, I'm still putting the finishing touches on it. And now this great publisher that I really want to put it with is suddenly interested. I got nothing to give the self-publisher. In 3 months, I wrote my third self-help book. It wrote itself, basically. It flowed. And that's what I gave the self-publisher to publish instead of the Lolita story. And that is called Awesome Success Principles and Quotations.
I've seen it. That's the one with the silhouette of the man in front of the water there with the sunset on it. And who published Defying Death in Hagerstown?
Morgan James.
Oh, I see. Morgan James Fiction. And this just was released in April, so it hasn't been out too terribly long. Are you, now that you've written this book and you're getting some feedback on it, are you going to have this as a standalone? Is there a potential sequel for the book?
There could be a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
One of my other books, the Mafia book, I made a sequel out of that one. It could definitely be a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a very, very touching story, and some people may even cry in the end. That's how touching it is.
Oh, well, I'm so glad that you wrote it and that you were that passionate about it. And wherever Lolita is, whoever she was, should feel, that somebody was there for her to tell a little bit about her personality and her life. And although the story is fictional, you're approaching Lolita as being a very real person. And I think that's really fascinating that you were able to use the diary and get a sense of what life was like for the actual Lolita and a little bit of her personality to infuse the fiction. And I think when you add elements of reality and truth to fiction, it actually makes it that much more interesting to read. Now, when you were talking about the murders, were there any murders taking place in the 20s that you kind of researched about, or was that total fiction?
No, that was fiction, but there were murders, not as many back then, but I took this quiet little Mayberry RFD town, and I kind of livened it up. And it's Mayberry RFD today, basically, and all of a sudden, when this guy starts nosing around, he just awakens a sleeping giant, and somebody wants him out of the way, even though that somebody is not the original killer,
Uh-huh.
because that person is gone.
So all the people associated with the murder are dead.
Right.
Oh, okay. So you're really having to dig deeply
Yeah.
for connections to find out.
There's a lot of different facets to this book. I mean, but you're falling in love with this 110-year-old Lolita, so philosophical, and you even fall in love with the main character, Lewis, who basically had become an alcoholic at the end of his rope and given up on life, and he changes completely.
How does he change?
And he falls in love with a beautiful, gray-eyed woman,
Uh-huh.
which I had to go through many, many pictures to find a beautiful, gray-eyed woman that I wanted to put in this book.
And who was the gray-eyed woman? You were saying you were going through photographs. Where did the photographs come
Well,
from?
I just went on. I research everything online constantly until I could find the right one. Such a
to
stranger.
inspire you.
Yeah.
Okay. An inspiration then with the picture. So it wasn't anybody that you knew,
No.
but the photograph really gave you some inspiration to come up with another character. And in the story then, the murders that took place, the author, the writer that you're talking about, who's at the end of his rope here, he goes to the police then, or I don't want to give away too much of your book.
No, he's a reporter, but the police are not helpful at all. They want him out of their town. And as things start really erupting, violence erupts in the town, different areas. They want him out of the town faster. Just get your interview done with this Lolita and get out of here. You're not wanted. So he wasn't getting any cooperation. And his boss from hell, the editor of the newspaper in Washington, he keeps trying to fire him over the phone. It's wild.
This poor guy, he's
wild.
He's not getting much help. We're going to take a short break here, a little station identification with the station. And I do encourage you to come back after the break. My guest tonight, Paul Carinci. Oh, I got it right. Is my guest tonight. And we're talking about his book, which is Defying Death in Hagerstown. So please come back after the break to listen to the rest of the show.
When it comes to your health and wellness, trust VenusSecrets.us. VenusSecrets.us, makers of all-natural skincare products imported from Greece and named after Venus, goddess of love and beauty. Organic, moisturizing ingredients that pamper your skin every day. VenusSecrets.us. Intensify and renew your hair and skin naturally. VenusSecrets.us. When it comes to your health and wellness, trust VenusSecrets.us and discover what millions of satisfied customers already know. VenusSecrets.us.
This is Arthur D. Schwartz, the host of Philosophic Perspectives, a new show on Artists First World Radio. Philosophic Perspectives is a creative journey that explores the wisdom of philosophy as it applies to issues both great and personal, from social controversies to the struggles of everyday living. Join us on the first and third Wednesday of each month, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific Time. I look forward to seeing you on the radio.
Hi, this is Robert Kramer. I'd like you to join me every fourth Wednesday night at 11 p.m., 10 Central, here on Artist First, for Tapping the Bitstream, where we'll explore the vast reaches of the indie music experiment. We'll talk indie music, get some helpful feedback and career tips from musicians and producers I've worked with, and also explore the world of sound and vibrations from a technical point of view. So join me Robert Kramer, every fourth Wednesday at 11 p.m., 10 Central, for Tapping the Bit Stream, right here on the Artist First Radio Network.
Thanks for joining us on the Dr. Briar Lee Mitchell Show. All past shows are archived. Visit artistfirst.com. And now back to your host, Dr. Briar Lee Mitchell.
Oh, thank you very much, and welcome back to the show. Just having a huge amount of fun chatting with my guest tonight, John Paul Carinci, because I've been murdering his name all evening, and he was helping me on the break figure how to properly pronounce it. And John, you have a potential contest that you'd like to talk about to the listeners.
Yep. I always like to give something away, and I would like to give to the first listener who will email me through my website. I want to give them a signed copy of Defying Death in Hagerstown.
Now, John's website is www.john, John, Carinci, that's C as in Charlie, ARINCI.com, johncarinci.com. And on the home page at the top, the fourth one over, you'll see Contact. And if you click on Contact, there's an area there where you can send a message to John. And they just need to say in the message there that they were listening to the show and would like a copy of the book.
Right, and just give me their name and address.
Okay. So
also, they can get to my website by www.johnpaulbooks.com.
Oh, okay.
That's
or
even easier.
John Paul Books. No kidding. That's a lot easier.
Yep.
johnpaulbooks.com. Very nice. Okay. And I hope that whoever gets your book really enjoys it, because I've enjoyed reading through the chapters that you had sent to me. The writing's engaging. The story is very lovely and very touching. What else would you like to tell us? Now, you were telling us a little bit more about Defying Death in Hagerstown before I had to go to the break. What other things would you like us to know about the book?
Oh, about the book?
Yeah.
It's just very, very special, and like my other fiction works, it just reads like a movie. It just plays out. I mean, it's very, very visual. That's what I'm told, that my writing is very visual. So
with the book, then, now we have information on your website. Where can people find the book?
Amazon.com.
Okay.
It's probably one of the best played. BarnesandNoble.com. It's available by order through all bookstores. I don't know if I have a lot of shelf space, but that's probably the best way. Amazon is a great place to buy things because it's inexpensive and low shipping.
Okay. So we definitely find it through Amazon, and the publisher also is Morgan James Fiction. Now, you have a number of other books that you've written, particularly some of these, and I think these are really fascinating, some of your self-help books. And I've been looking at some of the books that you have there. And you have, The Power of Being Different and An All-Consuming Desire to Succeed. I think these are also, and there's a third book that you had mentioned.
Awesome Success Principles and Quotations.
Now, what can you tell us about your self-help books? What prompted you? Now, you've written this really intense murder mystery, almost even a bit of a love story to it, Defying Death in Hagerstown. And then you've got these really intense self-help books. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write those.
Well, I never thought that I was going to write anything until later in life. When I was 20 years old, I started my career in the life insurance business, and life insurance is very, very difficult. Most agents fail in the business. It's very difficult to last a couple of years, no less 40 years in the business. So I'm in the business at age 20, real young, not a lot of contacts. I'm in the business for 6 months, and I'm not saying failing, but not making a good living. And I'm invited to a conference. I think it was in Pennsylvania. And we were going to listen to a motivational speaker. Again, I'm 20 years old, very young. And the speaker's name is Bob Richards. Most people don't know Bob Richards today. But many, many years ago, Bob Richards was on the Wheaties box. He was an Olympic champion. I don't know how many gold medals or bronze medals and so forth that he had won. And, of course, I didn't know at age 20 who Bob Richards was, but he was very popular in the 50s. And we're listening to this fella, Bob, on the stage, big auditorium, and he says, hello, and he's got this microphone, and as soon as he says hello, he takes the microphone and basically chucks it and just gets rid of it. And his voice was powerful. It was booming across the audience without a microphone. And this man was so inspiring and so uplifting that I says, you know what? After his speech, I got to get online, and I just have to meet the man. He's just that inspiring. So I wait online 15 minutes. I get up to the front, and he says, well, son, I said, Bob, you were great. He said, well, what do you do? I said, oh, I'm just an agent. He says, don't you ever say that again. He says, you do realize how important you are to the public? You realize that with your signature, you can insure someone for $300,000. He said, you can change someone's life. God forbid their father or husband passes away. You're a very important person. He said, I want you to go back home, and I want you to buy a book. And the name of the book is called Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude. And I says, sure, Bob, sure. So I basically run home. I buy this self-help book, Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude by W. Clement Stone, Napoleon Hill. Famous book. I didn't know it was famous. And I start to digest this book and digest it and digest it. And I, all of a sudden, become John Carinci, the owner of this little tiny insurance company. It was almost like it was my own business. I operated as if it was my business. I put blinders on. I didn't let anybody affect me, and I went right to the top. I became agent, sales manager, district manager, regional director of this company called Chubb & Son, until they turned around and fired everyone and closed their sales operation of life insurance down. And then I says, you know what? I'm going to become my own person and to start my own agency and stay in business for myself. And I never looked back, and I've become very successful. So many years later, I give this book away, Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude, for many, many years at Christmas, and I just wanted to tell somebody the story behind it and who is this person who inspired me. So I looked Bob Richards up online, and I says, oh, Bob Richards is still alive. This is many years later. Oh, I need to know which kind of medals he won so I can tell people to read this book and how it changed my life. And as an afterthought, I sent Bob Richards a copy of my little letter. And he calls me up and says, this is the most important letter I've ever received in my life. I want to meet you in the Waldorf Astoria for the 50th anniversary of the Olympics with all the stars and whatever, and I want you to sit at my table because I'm going to give another speech. And so I get to meet him again. So that is how Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude came about.
That's a heck of a start for a book. Now,
my book is called The Power of Being Different. So I wanted to touch one life the way Bob Richards touched mine. And I want to change one life. And I wrote this book, Power of Being Different. Took many years to write it, and I put it on the side, and I didn't want to publish it. And the reason I didn't want to publish it is because I knew I would be remembered for it one day. And I did not want to be remembered until I was a little older. So, I was a little scared.
Oh.
And then all of a sudden, 9/11 happened.
Oh.
And I says,
okay.
That's it. I have to just finish the book, put it out, because people need help. They need help. They need inspiration. They need to know that there's something else out there. And a self-help book becomes your newfound best friend. It inspires you. It listens to you. It talks to you, because most people don't want to listen to people anymore. They're too busy talking themselves, and this thing here will inspire you to change. And that's what it does. It has, as all my self-help books have been translated into many languages now, into foreign countries and in India and so forth. And it's helping people.
That's a very interesting comment that you just made, that people just don't want to listen anymore. And I think that's very true in a lot of ways, and that people want to be able to take things on their own terms, and then when you give them a book like this, they can decide on their own without somebody talking to them whether or not they're going to let that information into their life. And Bob Richards was a pole vaulter, and he was the first athlete to appear on a box of Wheaties.
Good.
I want to toss that in there.
Good.
Because that's who he was, and he was a very inspirational person. And I find it fascinating that somebody like him was stepping into the role of helping others to succeed. And it sounds like that's what you're doing with your book. Now, you have other books also that you are going to talk with us about. You have The Power of Being Different and Awesome Success Principles and Quotations. Now, are these books related to each other? Are they all different topics?
They're all uplifting. They all have success principles, how to change your life, how to get enthusiasm back in your life, understanding and forming good habits, how to use affirmations, self-help affirmations. But real quick, we want to pump you up, like they used to say on Saturday Night Live. We want to pump you up. So here we go. Each one of us is the greatest living miracle in the world. And we don't think about that, but we're each the greatest living miracle in the world. The human heart beats 100,000 times a day. It pumps 1 million barrels of blood in a lifetime. The brain can do 10 trillion operations per second. Your odds of being born with your specific personality is 225 billion to 1. Are we each the greatest living miracle in the world? Doesn't matter that you have 5 cents in your pocket, or $50 in your pocket, or 5 million. We're each the greatest living miracle in the world. And you know what? We have to be reminded of that. And these self-help books become your best new friend.
That's fascinating. We have to be reminded how special and unique we all are. And when someone is reading the book, then, do they feel like it's giving them step-by-step information, or is it just sort of is it written out like a calendar? In other words, read this per day?
No.
How are you reaching out to your readers?
What we do is we break it down to self-help stories of actual individuals. We take actual individuals, study them, and show how they become successful. And then we give you principles in there of how to become successful, and remind you that this fear, what is fear all about? What do we worry about? 40% of all things that we worry about never come to pass. 30% of all of our worries involve past decisions that can't be changed. 12% of worries focus on criticism. 10% is related to our health, which get worse with worry. Only 8% of all worries could be described as legitimate causes for concern. So that leaves 92% of worry useless and self-destructive. And you know what? People when you read it and you absorb it, you start to automatically feel better about yourself.
The odds are in our favor. I mean, you point that out so carefully and so cleverly that we would be silly to not look at that. I mean, look at the numbers that you just read. Where did you get your statistics from?
Oh, it's many, many, many years of research. As a manager for Chubb in my early days, I was the youngest district manager with agents under me. I used to give motivational meetings to get these guys pumped up so they can go out and sell life insurance, and I used to come up with all this stuff. And I started to accumulate it and put it all together.
Oh.
And like we study inventors, and by studying an inventor and a successful person, and we say to ourselves, you know what? I can be successful too. There's all different kinds of stories. I mean, Thomas Edison was classified as confused and non-teachable by his teachers. He was totally deaf in one ear, impaired in his other ear. He experimented many, many times before he invented an acceptable light bulb, and he perfected it. And he was once asked, how do you become successful? And Thomas Edison said, I have not failed 700 times. I have not failed once. I have succeeded in proving that those 700 ways will not work. When I've eliminated the ways that will not work, I will find the way that will work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, and we dissect inventors, and we find out, okay, well, what's different about an inventor? Why can't we adopt the inventor mentality where we don't stop until we are successful?
Well, how do you judge success? What is a way to say, oh, you're a successful person? How would somebody then say to themselves, I'm a success? What's the criteria for that?
Success is relative.
Okay.
Some people do not consider themselves a success unless they have $5 million in the bank.
Mm-hmm. This is
some
true.
Some people are very, very successful just raising children and having them turn out very educated and getting scholarships, and that could be a success. But
okay, in your book, are you also then asking people to reevaluate what they think success is?
No, what we're doing is we're letting you look into how people become successful. Here's the principles that they used. This is what's worked, and you too can excel and be a little bit better maybe than you are now. And we basically motivate you to try to be more successful.
Okay. Now, when someone's reading the book and they're reading about the lives and the trials and tribulations, if you will, of people like Edison, and some of my favorite ones are Dr. Seuss, had been turned down by everybody, and then he bumped into an old friend of his on the street who said, no, let me look at it, and then the rest is history, as they say. I always find it fascinating that people pick a certain path they want to go on, and they keep moving in that direction. They keep pushing for a certain goal, and when they reach the goal, they still do not feel successful. And I'm wondering then, is there a way that your book can help address that? In other words, have I made it as a success? What's the judgment of that? What's the criteria for it?
Nobody's going to judge you. You have to judge yourself, and you have to be happy with yourself. But we give you so many different principles, just like positive affirmations.
Mm-hmm.
A positive affirmation, a real simple one, is I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. Another one may be, I will be more successful. It's inevitable because my aggressiveness will equal opportunities for my success. I can, I will, I want to. All things are possible through belief in myself and the Lord and wisdom. And I go on and on and on. I have said these same sets of affirmations to myself every day
Uh-huh.
for more than the last 40 years. And basically what that does is it reinforces the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind sends out signals constantly to the conscious mind. It's almost like the silent mind, but it's absorbing everything that you are experiencing. So why not
I think that's
feed it?
very true. No, I think that's very true. I mean, if you keep telling yourself you're a failure, well, then that's what you're going to experience. But if you keep telling yourself that you are a success, that you are a good person, that you've achieved these things that you want to achieve, you can turn the boat around. You can help yourself to feel more positive about yourself. And
Well, it's programming. Our mind is basically a computer. Did you ever see anybody get up on a stage, look into someone's eyes, and then start barking like a dog?
No.
Yeah, well, I have. They've been hypnotized.
Oh, funny.
Did you ever see anybody hypnotized?
Yes. When I was in high school, I did, yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, hypnotism. That's working with the subconscious mind, the inner mind.
Mm-hmm.
And if the person is hypnotized correctly, they'll start quacking like a duck.
Mm-hmm.
And what are we doing by feeding positive thoughts to our subconscious mind and reinforcing it? It's almost like a lighthouse. It sends out signals. And we want the signals to be positive signals. And the opposite is true. If you feed it negativity, it's going to, without you even realizing it, it's going to send out signals of despair. So this is, we all basically know the right answers. We have to be reminded of it. And your best newfound friend, the self-help book, will help you do that. And mine are easy to understand.
How long does it take somebody to start to feel better? Is it instant? Do they get back in touch with you and let you know how your book helped them? Do they tell you that it was instantaneous or that it took a certain amount of time working with the book? Do you get feedback like that?
I've got feedback that people who've always wanted to write their own book have been inspired to write their own book because of my book.
Mm-hmm.
So, and to write a book is a major undertaking, and for someone to finish that, because basically my book has inspired them, that means something.
And the other books that you have that we wanted to also touch base on, The Power of Being Different, a success formula. Tell us about that.
And basically, we delve into different lives, people's lives that you know. It could be an actress, a singer, and we find out what made them successful. Like Elton John. Elton John was basically a failure for many years in the beginning. Nobody wanted to know him and so forth. And until he hit it all of a sudden. And then he had a writing partner, and he became very, very successful. Also, inspirational dissatisfaction. And we talk about the inventor of the earmuffs.
Okay.
Okay. The inventor of the earmuffs in 1873, at age 15, was Chester Greenwood from Maine. Grammar school dropout, invented the earmuffs. He was out skating around on a new pair of ice skates, and he was very frustrated in a way to protect his ears from the bitter cold. He ran back to the house, and he took some metal and shaped it to cover his ears, and asked his grandmother to please sew some fur on them. And that was the beginning of the earmuffs. And he became very, very famous. To this day, of the way to protect your ears from the cold. Okay?
Uh-huh.
See, inspirational dissatisfaction.
Uh-huh.
We all have a way of becoming very successful when we want to.
When we want to.
In other words, we're in the garage and we stub our toe real hard, and we say, "That's it. This Saturday, I'm going to clean this garage, and I'm going to get everything out of the way. I'm going to throw everything away, and I am inspired to start and fix this garage up. My toe still hurts. I'm going to fix this garage up until it's done." And that's called inspirational dissatisfaction. So we've all become very successful at one thing at given times. And so we delve into that. And how can we expand upon that? How can I write a book for 5 years? How can I start a book? I must be very slow, but it takes me like 5 years to write a book. How do I stay inspired for 5 years to finish that book? We all have a great book inside of us. We all do, each one of us. And they say that you really should write about what you know. So we have a book called Better Off Dead. Better Off Dead is about a very young life insurance agent who's failing in the insurance business, and he unknowingly gets mixed up with the mob.
Okay.
Yeah, this restaurant owner starts to feed him leads. He's failing. He's ready to be fired, and this restaurant owner starts feeding him leads to write life insurance on, and he starts becoming the best salesperson in the entire organization, buys a fancy car, and he's writing, and he says, "Just tell him Tony told you to call." And, "Oh, okay, Tony told me to call." And all these people start buying life insurance. He's great. He's not being fired. He's the number one guy in the agency until somebody dies. And then we find out that Tony Von Gemi is the head of a mafia family, and that these people are being knocked off. And now this young life insurance agent unknowingly is mixed up in something he can't get out of, and he knows one day he's going to be better off dead.
Now, is this a book you're currently working on?
No, that was my first fiction novel.
Oh, well, I wanted to just remind my listeners again that your website, is it John Paul Books?
That's fine.
Okay, johnpaulbooks.com, and John is offering to the first person who sends him an email through the contact page a book that he will send to you signed. And I want to thank you, John, for being on the show tonight, because you've got a really broad range of writing and some very fascinating books to share with readers. And the book that we had started talking about, Defying Death in Hagerstown, all of these books are available through Amazon. And, John, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Hey, listen, thanks for having me, and thanks for helping so many people that you help every time you have a show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And for all of my listeners who joined us tonight, have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.